Good afternoon and welcome to a beginner's guide to writing for business. My name is Dante St James. This will be a recorded session. They'll be available through Business Station's YouTube channel. To find that, all you need to do is just go to YouTube and search for Business Station. So hopefully you're in the right one. My apologies for being a little bit late to get this one started. I just had to finish up a phone call. What we will cover today, and hi Jay, is audience and purpose, clarity and conciseness. It's all going to make sense soon, I'm sure. These are just words, problem words and phrases as well. Something we'll take a little bit of a look at later. Now, this one does move really quickly. So if you do have some questions, we're going to save those for the end. As they come up, just put them in the chat window. I'll just put my hey everyone message into the chat window so you can see that. And that bit flashing there on your Zoom screen will be where you go and put in any questions you may have along the way. I'm looking forward to those questions. So feel free to save those up. And towards the end, we'll have a run through of everybody's different questions, depending on where they ask those. A little bit about me, if you haven't met me so far. I work with Google's Digital Springboard project, which is a digital literacy project by Google and Infoxchange in Australia, particularly geared to those with less advantaged, and of course to small business owners who are always less advantaged because we seem to be the people who suffer the most when economic changes happen. Also a certified practicing marketer with the Australian Marketing Institute, a lead trainer with Facebook. Facebook also certified me as a marketing science professional, digital marketing associate, media buyer and a media planner. And I'm also an accredited professional with the Australian Computer Society. What does that mean to writing? Well, really nothing. It's just that writing is one of those skills which all of us have to achieve. Every one of us has to have some kind of idea when it comes to writing for our businesses. And while this today is going to concentrate less on social media post writing and more on email writing, I think this could actually have a lot of value because you can take a lot of the principles from this into your social media writing. It gives you a bunch of prompts to think of when you go to do something like write a post for social media, write a letter, for instance, to a client, or if it just comes to writing things like flyers, having some of these prompts can help you to think a little bit more holistically when it comes to how to communicate with clients, with colleagues, even with mum and dad. So we'll start off first with looking for the audience and purpose of the thing we're writing. To do that, we've got to work out who it is we're writing for, who is our audience, and why you're writing this. And that's your purpose for writing it. Now, that doesn't sound as scary as probably what looks on screen. It just simply means working out who the audience is and then using the appropriate tone for different kinds of readers, depending on who they are. After all, you would speak very differently to your mum and dad than you'd speak to, say, somebody you're trying to sell a product to. All writing for business involves four main goals. Those four goals being to, be effective at achieving some kind of outcome. That could be a sale. That could be someone agreeing to something. It could be to getting your teenager to get off the bed and actually come out and eat their dinner. It could be to be informative for the audience that you're sending it to. So you're actually trying to put together some great information to get to somebody. It could also be about being responsive to elicit a very desired response from that reader, whether that's a sale, whether that's to click on a link on your email to be able to go and get more information about something. It could also be to be persuasive. And this is really where you get into that whole getting a sale or a decision, where you're getting into the nitty gritty of what kind of language and structure of writing works best when it comes to getting people to buy things or do things that they may not necessarily want to do. First up, we're going to look at knowing who your audience is. Now, as I said before, you don't talk to your mum and dad the same way you talk to a colleague. So it makes sense that writing to friends in a Facebook group chat is going to be very different to writing to a group of people in a business or to a business networking group or to a potential client. So that working out who it is you're writing for is vitally important. Because in business, you need to write your content to match the people who are going to read it. It's supposed to be some Let me just refresh my screen. I've had a little bit of up and down internet this afternoon, so I might be getting a few problems with my Canva connection. Let's try that again. That's looking more promising. And my pretty pictures, there we go. So you'll need to, that was all about getting those pretty pictures on board. But that's a really, really strong point, because in business, it is always about matching your content, matching your message, matching your marketing to those who are going to receive it. So it's not about necessarily what you need to achieve. It's also a mixture of those things that you want to be able to do. Let me just get that shared again. So it looks like it's undone my share. That's better. So some of the characteristics of your audience to consider when it comes to coming down to who that audience is. And this applies to marketing. It applies to everything to do with writing. It can even apply to when you're doing a presentation like the one I'm doing right now. You want to know how many people you're writing for. Is it one person? Is it a small group? Is it a very large audience? Is it a webinar like this one? Then, is there a specific gender you're writing for? Now, even in 2020, with many different genders and non-genders, there is still a different way to write depending upon who the gender is. That's baked into the English language. And whilst that's changing over time, there is still a certain way that goes towards making something well targeted to the person who you're trying to get it to. And then there's also knowing what the knowledge level of your audience is. Now, we used to say, what is their intelligence level? And then we learned there's lots of different kinds of intelligence: EQ, IQ, you know, street smarts, book smarts, completely different things. So it's all about the knowledge level of your audience compared to what it is you're trying to convey, especially if you're trying to convey information. Another one could be what your reader's issue of concern is. So if their concern is coming to you with an inquiry about a product, then start with that. Or you can then bear in mind what their role in your organization is, or their organization is. You will write very differently to somebody who is in the sales team of an organization that you're responding to than you will for the CEO of that organization. The CEO, she may be not necessarily the person that you thought she was. And then there's also your relationship with that reader. Is this someone you've dealt with before? Or is this a completely fresh person and it's completely cold contact and you have no idea who the face is behind that? Now, this is where a little bit of research really, really does go a long way. A perfect example of that is going onto places like LinkedIn and Facebook to see who that person really is, to get a sense of who they are. You're not stalking, you're actually just doing research that helps you to be a more persuasive seller or to be a more effective writer. You can go to the company's website that you're dealing with. There's quite often bios about different staff members on there. And you can also, if it's someone in the organization you're already working in, let's just say, for instance, you've got a network marketing organization you work with, and one of your, the people that you meet with very, very frequently is on the same sort of downline as you, and you don't know how to approach people who are 2 lines up from you, then asking someone else in your downline about whether they know more about that person could be a really effective way of getting the information you need to tailor your message. Now, again, you're not stalking, you're just simply, this is business. The more information you have, the more effective you can be at communicating. So an example can be someone called Kerry Jones. Kerry Jones is receiving the quote that you're putting together at this development company. Let's just say you are in a business that deals with recruitment. You're going to be doing recruitment for this development company that's building a very large development in the Brisbane CBD. So, first of all, are we writing this for Kerry Jones alone? Or is it being provided to Kerry Jones' personal assistant? Or maybe it's even to a team of project managers who are going to be receiving this quote and judging it accordingly. That's how we then know to write differently to a group rather than writing just to Kerry. The next one is is Kerry Jones a man or a woman or otherwise? So what are the pronouns you're going to be using? Is it a he, him, his, they, them, theirs, she, her, hers? That's something you get to work out with a little bit of prior study, because the name Kerry could be for a guy or for a girl. It could be either of them, and the spelling doesn't always tell you that either. My auntie Kerry, I've got two of them. One of them spells it with a Y, and the other one spells it with an IE, which really just confused the heck out of me when I actually met someone who was a teacher of mine in primary school, and his name was Kerry as well. Then, when you're writing a recruitment letter about the specifics about the kind of roles you want to hire for, does Kerry Jones have the insight or the knowledge of the technical sides of those roles? Now, you can find that out a lot from a LinkedIn profile where you can see a job history. So for instance, if you see that Kerry Jones is actually formerly an engineer and is now the CEO of a development company, you know that when you're talking about hiring engineers and structural engineers and civil engineers for that particular project for Kerry, you can talk more technically to Kerry about those roles because Kerry will understand that. Then we look at the kind of person we're targeting and what their concerns are. Now, if Kerry Jones is known to be the project manager and the CEO of the company, Kerry has a very defined, very solid interest in what your quote's going to be about. But if Kerry Jones is just the figurehead and the person receiving the initial quote, but not really making the judgment and certainly not drilling down into the details of it, then you're kind of not just writing for Kerry Jones, you're really writing for who Kerry Jones passes that information on to. And you see, there's so much stuff that you can consider before you even start writing that first sentence. And then of course, is Kerry Jones a boss in your organization? Is Kerry Jones a personal assistant? Is Kerry Jones an accounts receivable person? Knowing the role of who the person is gives you a very strong regard of the kind of language to use and the kind of level of either persuasion or maybe response that you want to give them. And knowing how Kerry Jones fits in the overall, because we looked at that previous screen where we saw what's your relationship with the reader. Now, do you know Kerry Jones? Have you met Kerry Jones? Have you had a conversation with Kerry Jones at a networking event? It may be worth bringing up that, yes, I have done that. I have met you before, and bring that up in the proposal. A proposal is 6 times more likely to be considered if it's written for its intended audience. That's from Sonia Simone, who is a part of Copyblogger, a very excellent podcast that I listen to. And I thought that was a really strong one because it takes us back through all these pieces of research. Yes, the research does go a long way. Finding out something from LinkedIn can really help you to target down the kind of language to use. Knowing what they are on their website, the role that they fulfill in that particular company, also helps you to craft the content of your writing. And then if you know somebody who knows Kerry Jones, because you don't, getting some personal insight into the kind of person Kerry Jones is. Are they someone who's funny, the life of the party, or are they someone who's very straight-laced and wants just the facts? Knowing these pieces of information, even if you don't get all of them, get 1 or 2, it helps you to much better craft a bit of writing that's going to go to the intended audience and get the response you want to get out of it. It's so important. You would think that everything these days is measured on merit alone and measured on the content being perfectly formatted and requirements being met. But so many decisions are still made from an emotional or a reactive level when it comes to business, especially in small business. You know, I've never tended to hire people in my businesses that have tended to be necessarily the people who are best on paper. They're the people who I had some kind of emotional response to as well. I liked them. I could see myself working with them. I could see them in the future training other people within my organizations as well. So those emotional decisions would have been lost if they had not in some way crafted their introduction to me by letter first and by interview later as being something I could relate to, as being crafted just for me. Now we want to know what our purpose is. Now we know who we're sending this letter to. Knowing our purpose. If we want to be effective, we need to be very clear, crystal clear on what the point of our writing is. So we ask ourselves, why am I writing this? So spending a little time to work out your purpose helps you to stay right on topic without wandering too far from it, keeping within the context of the conversation you're trying to have, whether that's in a chat channel or whether that's on an email or in a formal letter. It leads towards your main points. So as you're not wandering away from things and as you're keeping in context, you're staying down that path, which is getting you to the main points that you want to convey across to that person. And you're far more likely to get the reaction from your communication that you're looking for. So if you don't know the purpose of your writing, you probably need to figure that out before you start. You need to ask yourself, why am I writing this thing? Is it a document, an email, a letter, a proposal? Why am I writing it? If it's a proposal, it's to win that proposal. It's to win that grant or to win that tender or to get that job. And then you ask yourself, what do I want the reader to do after they've read it? Or do I want them to know something after it's being read? We'll expand a bit on that because there's three really different kinds of writing. You can start off with the kind of writing that's meant to inform people of some information. There's a writing that's designed to respond to somebody who's reached out, whether it's a piece of feedback. And there's a piece of writing that is all about persuasion. It's often thought of as sales. When we're looking to inform, it could be something like an email to employees or colleagues to let them know about new parking arrangements at your particular business. It could be a newsletter to clients, letting them know that your premises has been certified as COVID-19 safe. It could even be a letter to the Chamber of Commerce to confirm that your contact details have changed in some way, that your new address is this. Please remove my previous address. One could be to get a response, which is all about that letter for the Chamber of Commerce. The response is, change my details on your website. The newsletter one is to put across some information. And the email to employees is to, number one, get a response to obey the new parking arrangement, but also to give them some information that says, yes, there actually is something here you need to know. If you're looking to write something that is to get a response or to, this is really about you responding. It could be you responding to some sort of query from a customer about one of your products or one of the services that you provide. It could be to thank an unhappy customer for giving you some feedback or get them a response to a complaint they're giving to you. It could also be to confirm that you received notice from your contractor that they won't be working today or a staff member. It could be that somebody said, I can't make that appointment today. Can you please reschedule? So these are all types of writing which are eliciting a response from you. And then finally, when we're writing to persuade, that's when we're looking for writing text in a new product brochure, in a flyer, writing a script for a TV or a radio ad. Yes, you're trying to persuade someone to deal with your business. Or it could be about writing an email to a client to convince them to consider changing their service with you, maybe upgrade it to spend more with you each month than what they were spending with you before. Three very different kinds of writing style. One to get information across, one where you're responding to someone when they've reached out to you first, and one where you're trying to change the behavior of somebody to do something like buy from you. But maybe you've got something which has got all those in it. It could be a letter that starts off, thanks for your inquiry. I'm sorry about the problem with our product. That was the response. Our refund policy states that we cannot accept a return if the item's been worn. That's some information. And then this is to protect customers' health. However, I'd like to offer you a store credit to use, which is to persuade that person to maybe not leave us a bad review on Facebook or a bad review on Google somehow. So that's an example where you may have a piece of email that's going back as a response, but also contains information and a bit of persuasion to keep that customer on a happy place. Yes, they may not be able to get a refund because that item's been worn, but they may actually be able to get a store credit to use, which might be enough to keep them happy if they're willing to deal with your company again. So before we write any message, we've got to figure out if it's about trying to get information across to someone, are you informing someone of something? If it's about responding, answering a question, you ask if, am I responding here? Or am I persuading someone to do something? So first, in the am I informing, here's some examples of where you might be informing. It could be a new employee guide, a report that you're writing every month or every quarter. Meeting minutes are always a really good one because that's a bunch of information. Could be a standard operating procedure, like an employee manual or something that's like a guidebook of how to do the parts of your job. They're all writing to inform. So when you're writing to inform, you're writing to ensure that whoever is reading has these new facts to consider, that they're getting it into them, and you want them to take those facts on board. You're not just throwing out information. Like, for how many of us have ever, when we've had a job, read our employee guide from front to back? When I had one working with a telecommunications company, it was over 700 pages thick. I was never going to read the whole thing. But whenever something went wrong, they said, read your employee manual, read your employee manual. It was the least friendly way of trying to deal with HR ever. So when you're writing for someone to inform them of something, you've got to make sure that they're able to read a bunch of new ideas or new facts that you're trying to bring into the conversation, and that they can actually let them sink in and take those facts on board. The new parking arrangements at work are a perfect example. We don't want to just like say, there's new parking arrangements at work. We also want to make sure there's something in there that helps someone to remember that new parking arrangements are on board now. But how do you ensure those facts are received? Ultimately, it's up to the person receiving them to understand them. But you can help that along by making sure you are direct, you are crystal clear with your facts, you're nice and concise and keep it brief. You keep stuff in a really neutral tone, not too happy, not too sad, not monotone. We're not trying to go, make sure it's direct, clear, concise, neutral in tone, accessible, but having some kind of neutrality in it. We're not trying to make someone excited necessarily. We're not also trying to make someone depressed. We're just making sure there's enough expression in our written tone that it's going to get something across to someone. And also that it's accessible, that people at different levels can understand it. So you do that. Here's an example of an email we're going to have. We're going to tell our reader why we're writing this email to them. So we're sending out an email here where we're pointing out some errors in the use of a tripod we're using to put our microphones and our mobile phones on to record some live video on Facebook, as an example. So what we need to tell them is that we've had a problem where the instructions in the manual did not match the tripod we were given. And we just need to let them know that, because we love this tripod. It's great, but there's something wrong that we're having trouble letting our other people in our organization or our clients know how to use these tripods. So we'll start off with the subject, just a matter of fact thing, errors in tripod instructions. Nothing fancy in there. No, oh my God, this is so stupid. Nothing like that, just errors in tripod instructions. So then they know exactly what's going on. And they'll start off with, I found some inconsistencies in the standard operating procedure that's supplied with the tripod I purchased on April 23. The images showing how to operate the tripod don't match the interface on the tripod itself, which is causing our clients to have difficulty using the tripod. You're telling them exactly why you're writing this email. It's because there's a problem. The tripod doesn't match the instructions about the tripod, and your clients are having trouble using the tripod as a consequence. Then we'll organize our main points. We're moving on from, okay, here's what's wrong. Now we're going to move on to how we can point out exactly what was wrong, because we just said, yeah, they're wrong. We haven't said where. So examples of some of the inconsistencies include figure 2.1, the tripod shown is not the same as the tripod delivered. And in figure 3.3, the written language in this figure appears to be Russian. However, the rest of the instructions are written in English. So now they've got an exact description of not only what the problem is, but where to find the problem, so they can either replicate it or see it for themselves. This is where now it's important to note accuracy and facts, because accuracy and facts makes you more trustworthy. It adds credibility to the message you're trying to put across. And it assists the person receiving that message with making a good decision, or at least an informed decision about what to do next. And one very, very important way you do that is by you separate the facts from your opinions or your feelings about the facts. So in green on the right, you can see that the tripod shown is not the same as the tripod delivered, and then figure 3.3 as well. They're the facts. We're not adding any emotion to that. We're not saying it's so stupid the tripod shown is not the same as tripod delivered. We're not saying that the language appears to be Russian. I can't read Russian. Russian's stupid. We're just saying, like, these are the facts. But then we can add an opinion in there. Because we've stated the facts, now our opinions hold more weight. We're not trying to use the opinions to necessarily guilt trip anyone to doing anything. But what we've set up now is a situation where now that we know what the problem is, now that we know how to replicate that problem and see it elsewhere, it's so much easier to understand what the emotional impact or what the real world impact could be. The opinion is, I like your tripods, they're great, but your instructions need to be accurate. Now, if I was reading an email like that, I'd go, this is so good. I've got this feedback. I know what to do with it. I know exactly where to go and fix it. And you know what? The fact that, they're saying, but your instructions need to be accurate, that's a fair call. Our instructions need to be accurate. And they said something nice too. They said, I like your tripods, they're great. So you're actually feeling a lot better coming out of it than what you were maybe heading in when you thought, oh, here's another complaint. And I can tell you, as someone who worked in call centers when I was going to university, and someone who deals with probably up to 30 small businesses a week, when I receive information in this kind of format, where it's set out, that separates the opinions and the emotions from the facts, that is very clear and very concise about what the issue is, I can look at that and go, I'm going to handle that now. I'm going to handle that right now, because I don't have to go looking and calling and researching. Everything I need to know is right here in this email. So the result for this would be, if I was the person receiving the email about the wrong tripod instructions, is because I've got all the information I need, I can action this straight away and get it fixed for them like that. So if the clarity of that information gets across much more quickly, you can also expect that you'll start to get people responding better to you, because it's all about clarity. If I know what the problem is and where to find it so I can fix it, then I can fix it. If I know who the problem is in my organization because it's been explained to me and what exact areas those problems are happening, I can then go and address it because I have clarity. So that's about informative writing. Now we're going to look at the responsive writing, or asking that question, am I responding to something? So an example of writing response could be a customer inquiry. It could be a communication from one of your staff. It could be communication from a colleague, applications for jobs. We're getting them all the time. Or writing to respond to things like feedback on standard operating procedures, where somebody's letting you know that that standard operating procedure may not be quite accurate. So the purpose of responsive writing is to keep your customers and your colleagues happy with you. We all want happy people around us because it makes life move so much more smoothly and makes our days feel great. We feel good about our jobs, about our careers, about our businesses, if people are happy. Responsive writing, therefore, to be effective, needs to be prompt, and it also needs to be courteous. Even though sometimes the writing you're receiving from other people doesn't inspire you to be either of those things. But you're a business owner now, so you have to take this on board. So prompt usually means within 24 hours. If someone comes to you with an inquiry that isn't time sensitive, in other words, is not asking about whether the link to that Zoom call in 1 hour is going to be still the right one, you probably need to answer that almost immediately because it's in 1 hour. But if someone's even more upset waiting that 24 hours could be creating a situation where one of two things can happen. You're letting them cool their jets a bit, because in 24 hours, they may not actually have quite the same emotional response, or you're letting them stew in their juices for another 24 hours. So they're bubbling up with even more problems coming. So when you finally get back to them after this 24 hours, it seems to have taken a lifetime to get back to you. Gosh, that's like I'm waiting for a response from Telstra or Facebook or Google, really. Then that might not be a great thing. So usually a response should come back within 24 hours from any business. That seems fair. It seems achievable. Doesn't have to have all the answers in it. It can often just be acknowledgement that you've received that communication, and then a commitment to say, hey, we're really under the pump right now. We can get back to you with a more detailed response in a week. If there's an emergency, you can come back to us. If they come back to you, they're obviously really upset and there's a really strong urgent issue there, then you can skip them up the queue a little bit. But why does being prompt and courteous matter? Well, it's showing the customer that you're taking them seriously. You're taking this situation seriously. There's nothing worse than being ignored. It makes us all rile up in anger when there's a problem that goes on and on and on because we feel like nobody is actually taking us seriously. It just makes us more and more angry, and it makes the people at the other end look like a bunch of incompetent fools. So that whole prompt and courteous thing shows you're being professional, even when the customer is not being professional in their approach. They're not being particularly courteous to you. Your response, being professional, makes a world of difference, because it can be the difference between escalating something up to Karen wanting to see the manager, to a complaint to, you know, consumer affairs and those kind of areas. Or it can be calmed down to a, hey, look, I know you've had a bad time. What can I do to help make this better? Oh, well, I just really needed someone to hear me out. You know, now if you heard me out, let's work something out. And it becomes so much more simple. And very rarely are aggressive emails matched up by aggressive people who are on the phone or in person to you. Most people are kind of keyboard warriors when it comes to the internet. When they're sending an email, they're sending a piece of feedback, they're like on their keyboard. But when they're in person, they're actually completely pleasant and completely reasonable, because there's something about the blockage between my keyboard and your keyboard which dehumanizes people. So by being prompt and courteous, you're showing someone that you're a real person and you're being professional about what their issue is. So an example could be, let's handle a complaint about our services. Subject came in, complain about your services. I'm like, oh, here we go. Dear Bridget, thank you for your feedback about our recent experience with our business. So we're just going straight into it and acknowledging exactly why it is that Bridget got back to us. Bridget came to us because she has a complaint about the services. So we're saying, thank you for your feedback about your recent experience with our business. That sets the context. It's calm. It's not too flowery. We're not saying, thanks for your extensive feedback about your recent horrific experience with our very popular and normally very beautiful business. Just thanks for your feedback about your recent experience with our business. It's just nice, short, sharp, and simple. It's still got enough humanity in it to be read like a human, but it's also got not all that flowery stuff, which just frustrates us because it takes so much time. Now we're going to be precise about exactly the issue that Bridget raised. She was complaining that she wasn't able to access anyone on our team after hours when she was trying to call through to a number which happened to be wrong. And she was very angry about that. So we're going to let her know that there is a correct way to get in touch with us. Hey, so we're going from acknowledging what the problem was, and then moving on to information. We're now informing in this response. The correct way to access our team services via a booking made at our website or via our phone number. And here they are. So that means that we're not making a fool of anyone. I'm not saying, you stupid girl, Bridget, you calling the wrong number at the wrong time of the day. How very dare you? We're just saying, look, there is a correct way to access us, and here's those things. So she's got that now for the future. And you've got to cross the message that the other number that she seemed to be calling wasn't hers, but you're not making her feel like an idiot because of that. Then you could perhaps add a bit of information that helps to express that even more clearly. It's like, look, I've also attached a PDF for you that gives you a range of ways you can access our services online. So you're giving another option for contact that's not on those normal ways. You're saying, actually, here's some more information that might be even more helpful for you. Because they're angry enough, they don't want to deal with someone, but they have to use you. I'm looking at you, Telstra. Then it's you would want other ways to contact. I love the fact that Telstra has crowd support. I love the fact that Telstra has chat support, because I hate getting on the phone to complain and whinge about things being broken. I just want to keep doing what I'm doing, but then I'm able to, whether that's watching TV or watching a webinar or something like that, I don't have to take time out to go, I have to now waste an hour waiting for Telstra. I can just go, here's my problem. Someone can come back and deal with it. And it's done so much more efficiently, and I can get on with my day. But we can add a little bit more by being sincere, or we can be conversational. You can be much more helpful when you're showing that there's some sincerity or some humanity behind what you're saying. You're not sounding like a robot. Because so far, a robot could probably say any of the things that we're saying in there. Thanks for your feedback, the correct way to access. I've also attached. When we start moving away from the thanks and the, we're going to the I. We're going into, this is a person. This is going beyond just a standard canned auto response. This is now a person actually doing this. I've also attached a PDF for you. I hope this is helpful. That's being sincere. And being a little bit more conversational and saying, look, thank you for considering working with us. You're not saying that she's definitely going to work with you in the future, but you're ending on a positive note. You're hoping it's helpful, which is appealing back to her to say, this is information you can use. I think this is what you may have been looking for. And then thanking them, not just for working with you, but also taking the time out to let you know there was a problem, because you don't know how many other people might have been picking up that wrong phone number from an old copy of the Yellow Pages that was printed back in 1996. Being brief and concise in business communications is like the golden nugget of truth that you're going to come across with all your communication. And this is the same in presentations, which is why we do these webinars within 1 hour, so we can keep that information brief and concise, and we're valuing your time, because excessive words waste time. They do. Being brief but not abrupt helps a message get across really well. I'm being as brief as I can on these particular slides, but you're not getting an abrupt message that's still jarring you. And being brief and concise helps you do that magical thing of staying relevant and staying on topic. It can be so simple to sort of wander off into a meandering description about how once upon a time I could relate to this by this allegorical story. This helps us to stay really relevant and helps us to stay on target for the topic that we're trying to talk about. We did that with Bridget, remember? When we're staying very much on target. We're staying very much on about, here's our message, here's information you must know, here's a bit of extra help, and here's our humanity. But we did it all in such a very short format. We didn't have to go into long, meandering, excessive justifications, because nobody cares about our justification. Bridget just wants to know why it didn't work and how it can work in the future. So being clear, courteous, concise, and conversational, the 4 C's there, it promotes trust in your business. It promotes trust in you as a human being. When people wander off on story after story after story, it starts to sound a little bit weird. It starts to sound a little bit fake. It starts to sound like this Nigerian prince is starting to trying to get my money. It prompts an in-kind response. When you reach out professionally with courtesy, then somebody's tension can be just simmered down a little bit. They can feel a lot more comfortable about approaching you and feel like they're being heard. And in so many cases, in call center conversations, when I did that as a teenager or very late teenager, when I could actually let someone know that I understood what they were saying and I understood the impact it was having on their life, I was far better able to deliver a service and deliver a response and a solution that worked for them. And the best part of all of this is, by being clear, courteous, concise, and conversational, you can put that one in your archive and move on to the next thing. So you can get on with your day and get past that one little piece of not so great, not quite so positive stuff in your day. Which then brings us on to what the next thing might be, which is persuasion, where you're asking the question in that piece of written communication, am I trying to persuade someone? Am I persuading? So examples where you might be writing to persuade could be where you're wanting someone to buy something from you, where you're wanting a pay rise, where you're wanting someone to finish the task they promised they were going to finish last week for you, or you're seeking to get a testimonial from a client or a customer. Oh, that's just like trying to get blood from a stone. That's such a hard thing to get. The act of persuasive writing is to aim to work against people's resistance to change. People are not used to sending testimonials through to people. It feels weird. People are not used to, well, what some of the other examples we had, they're not used to going to have to get a pay rise. They'd much rather the boss came and said, say, yeah, you deserve a pay rise. Or it could be that people aren't used to people just leaving them alone to shop and make decisions for themselves. So we come into the conversation and say, we want to combat your resistance to change and give you something new, a new option. Persuasive writing also aims to show a benefit to them or their business, because if there's no what's in it for me, then it's very, very unlikely that I would change my ways. If I've always bought Kraft Singles plastic cheese, then I'm not going to be easily transformed to buy a bigger variety of that particular cheese unless I see a benefit to myself in that. So let's break that down a little bit. I'll take a sip of water. Let's start with an email that's sent out. We're going to start with attracting some attention. Now, in this case, we're talking about from a political point of view. We're in an election year in the Northern Territory, as they are in the United States. And so we're starting to see a lot of back and forth happening from different political parties, sending emails, SMS messages, all that usual stuff that happens when there's an election. So we're going to attract attention to this particular issue. I've made this up. There's no tax reform issue going on here, just something I made up. By stating straight up front, dear Zilv, 5,000 small businesses in the territory are at risk from a lack of action on tax reform. Now, I'm a business owner. That will get my attention because it's about me. It's about small business. And I'm probably one of those 5,000 who could be at risk from a lack of action on tax reform. I'm interested. Take me further. Now we're going to stimulate interest via self-interest. It might be your local bakery. It might be your child's after-school care, perhaps even the hairdresser you've been going to for many years. They're like, well, I don't have a child, but I do like the local bakery a little bit too much. I would be pretty sad to see that bakery disappear because I like their donuts. Okay, I've got self-interest now. I'm in. Tell me more. You want to maintain that attention now by saying something such as, when small businesses are gone, prices go up, and that hurts everyone. I'm like, oh yeah, that's me. I don't want to pay more for things. And then we want to provide an opportunity for them to decide upon something desirable or undesirable. So you can say that something is desirable. So the outcome could be, for your family, that could mean the difference between paying more or paying less at the checkout. Or in this case, we're looking at what is the undesirable consequence of letting small business fade away. And that could be, we're looking at, for your family, that could be the difference between dealing with people you trust or dealing with faceless international corporations. Gosh, this is such a convincing email. It almost seems like it's real. So we've gone at the very beginning and we looked at getting the attention, making it all about them, maintaining that attention by adding another point that could affect them, and then promoting a point where we provide an outcome that's either desirable or undesirable for them. We've combined both there and gone, the desirable outcome is dealing with people you trust. The undesirable one is those faceless international corporations, damn them. So we've created a really convincing, but look how brief that email is. It's convincing, yes, but it's super brief. Now the local party, one of the local parties here that sent me an email the other day, this is essentially a similar thing that they were saying about business, not bond tax return form, but they had other reasons they were bringing up. This thing went on and on and on and on, and yep, you get it. It just went on and on and on. It was such a long, long one. I ended up getting about the second paragraph down. I could see how much I had left to read. I went, too long, didn't read. TLDR, get it out of there. I don't have the time for this. So their message was completely and utterly lost on me. If they had written that message in a much shorter format like this one, where they immediately get in and they say, here's something that affects you. Here's something which might actually affect you really directly. Here's another thing that's going to affect you. And here is where we give you a choice. You can do nothing and get an undesirable result, or you can do something and get a desirable result. The only thing that's missing here is a call to action. And that's saying what you can do in response to all this to get that desirable action that you want, that desire of dealing with people you trust, dealing with that local bakery that makes those damn good donuts you love. Sign our petition here to help get our message to the decision makers in Canberra before it's too late. So we're not just saying, here's a problem, here's what it's going to do to you. We're saying, here's something you can do about it. So it's very, very clear from the very start what the problem is and how it affects me. It then hammers home how it really, really could affect me. And then it gives me an opportunity to have some kind of response. Again, a really short email that said everything it needed to say. So that will show you then that we've got those three different kinds of communication. I'm going to go back right to the very, very beginning. There's a lot of slides there. Are we looking to inform in our writing? Are we looking to respond to someone? Or are we looking to persuade someone? Now that persuasion exercise is always the one that people come back again and again and say, oh my goodness, that changed the way I write. I used to write such long emails. And I went, that's all I need to write. It's not that much. If you want to see more of this again, you can pick this up in Business Station's YouTube channel, which will be happening probably in the next 48 hours. They're pretty quick at getting those up. Just go to YouTube and search for Business Station. Now, we haven't had a lot in the way of questions so far, so that's great. So I'm just going to give you an opportunity now in the next 60 seconds to just type up something you've got a question for, or you can raise your hand. I think there's a raising hand thing in here. That'll help you out. If you've got a question you'd like to ask about a particular kind of approach to writing emails, writing business documents, that maybe something was burning in your mind when you saw this particular webinar and said, ooh, that sounds interesting. I might go and do that one. So I can tell you it's not my handsome face that got you here. It was something about that got you here. So yeah, if you've got a question or a particular scenario you'd like to run by me, quickly pop it in there and we'll see if we can answer those along the way. This is looking very encouraging. Like everybody got this one right through to the end. And we finished a little bit early too. It's 2:24 Central Time, which is approaching what, 3 o'clock Queensland time, and about what, 1 o'clock in Western Australia. Looks like you all had a great time. So thank you so much. Please make sure you send that feedback because the feedback lets me know. It doesn't come to me as anything that that tells me that this person said bad things about me. It just lets me know if there's something that I could do better in my presentations. I've got quite a few of these to go for the next few months. I do apologize for being a little bit late today in that respect, and also for the fact that we had a couple of sharing problems. But thank you so much for your patience. I'll put my email address in the chat window quickly so you can copy and paste it. If you'd like to reach out at all and ask any questions that you think of later on, just send me an email. I'll get it through that email address, and I'll be able to help you answer those questions nice and quickly. Once again, this is recorded and it will be available on Business Station's YouTube channel. Thank you so much for today. Oh, here we go. We've got one from Vincent. Thank you. Is using emoji to individual customers okay? And what are the general rules about emojis? That's a great question, Vincent. We weren't even looking at covering that, but I would say that emojis are useful in a context. In an email, I'm not sure that emojis are that great unless you're very familiar with the person. But in a, say in a social media message where people are on a format, so for instance on Facebook Messenger or on WhatsApp, where you can see that this is some way that people will communicate using emojis. Yes, by all means, but I would not rely upon emojis as the sole way of getting the message across. Remembering that you're talking to a customer here, you're not talking to your best mate. Your best mate might understand what the middle finger emoji means. A customer will probably think that you're trying to give them the bird, literally. So it'll be one of those things where in context, where it's a platform, where emoji is common, where the customer may be very young, where the customer is very informal. In fact, the way they've written is very informal. Then emojis can be a really good way of helping to get across emotions and especially our mood. So for instance, if you've got something you're putting across which says, I'll go on, you know better than that. Now those words could actually be quite aggressive if delivered just in plain writing, but with a winky emoji next to it, it actually goes, oh yeah, they're just having a piece of me. They're having a lend of me. They're just having a bit of fun. Not necessarily at my expense, but just to lighten the mood a little bit. So emojis can be really helpful in that one. I do use emojis occasionally in business communications, but I look at the communication I've had with that person previously, or people who are like them, who have asked similar questions, and I make sure they at least match that tone a bit. I just want to make sure that I'm not sort of standing out there doing something which is going to be received in a really bad way. I don't want people to think that I'm some kind of idiot by throwing in a couple of love hearts and a rainbow emoji, because that's the kind of day I'm having. It's about being appropriate to the audience that you're doing. But thank you very much, Vincent. That was really, really good question. In fact, I might actually take that question and put it into the next time I do this, or into a more advanced version of this. Again, thank you so much. I'll get out of here now and let you get back to your day. I hope you have a fantastic week, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.